Just admit you're lying, Cartman, so that everyone can go home.
Oh no, we have a deal, Kyle. If I can prove there's a leprechaun, you have to suck my balls, remember?
Revisiting some of my personal favourite episodes of South Park, I thought we'd take a look at the three-part special Imaginationland, where all three episodes were initially released individually on the Season 11 DVD set, but then there is also this separate release which is slightly different, combining all three episodes into a concise director's cut. And so in this video we shall be reviewing the episodes, but I also thought it would be worth discussing the differences between both versions. And oddly, a lot of these changes relate mainly to the pacing, with additional shots and lines of dialogue, and some of the shots are slightly extended where the animation is visually different. For example, in the opening scene, Kyle is meant to be seated on a log while Cartman rants about discovering a leprechaun in the forest, but in the director's cut he's standing up. And there's no real explanation behind this change other than perhaps it worked better visually. And speaking of the visuals, this is easily one of South Park's best animated projects. For the scope and the amount of detail captured, the visuals really do solidify just how memorable Imaginationland really is. And I love this for the vast array of versatile characters included, whilst also making callbacks to some fan favourites for better or worse. It's also interesting to note how the idea behind Imaginationland was actually to make it into a second South Park movie. And since there were no immediate plans to do this, the creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone kept this idea in their back pocket to follow up later down the line. And halfway into the second run of episodes for Season 11, the creators were unfortunately struggling with ideas, and so they decided to go all in with the Imaginationland story, fortunately for us. And at first they were going to actually cover all of this in one episode, and with the scale of how the project was looking, that would have been absolutely horrendous. And in the audio commentary, Trey and Matt discuss how it looked to be a two-parter at first, but eventually it became more obvious that the story needed to be fleshed out, therefore creating a three-part story. Even though a movie would have given the creators more freedom, generally speaking, the only restriction was really the censorship on the televised broadcast. And compared to the director's cut, this is completely uncensored with extra lines and extended scenes, and plus watching all three parts without interruption does also make for a better viewing experience in my opinion. I really appreciate the written quirk surrounding part 1 where it gives you a taste of an absurd idea, fleshing out South Park's take on the imagination, and this level of world building leaves you wanting more where we see a few quirky new characters, and we learn about how the fictional characters are made, imagined by real people, blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. And we also get the hint of a villainous side to the imagination, as shown at the very end of the first part, being a cliffhanger going into part 2. The plot heavily revolves around a bet laid out by Eric Cartman, who claims that leprechauns are real and that he has seen one in the forest, and where Kyle disagrees. If proven wrong, he has to suck Cartman's balls. Easily a fate worse than death, and unexpectedly, Cartman is right. They successfully trap a leprechaun who warns the boys about an incoming terrorist attack, and then he suddenly disappears, and I like how this warning is completely ignored, in favour of Cartman winning the bet, which is honestly more shocking for the boys. Across all three episodes, Cartman is far more interested in Kyle and the unspeakable he's now contractually obliged to do. And adding fuel to the fire, one of my favourite scenes is the dinner at the Broflovski house. It's hilarious how the family takes Cartman's side without knowing what Kyle has gotten himself into.
And there was a leprechaun! You saw it, Kyle!
Yay, Kyle's gonna suck balls.
As their feud continues, the other boys are playing outside when they are approached by a very mysterious stranger. And this scene includes one of my personal favourite lines from Butters, which always catches me off guard.
Are you gonna rape us?
No?
Referred to as the mayor, this very eccentric character asks whether or not the boys have seen a leprechaun, and if he said anything, referring to his warning about an attack. And travelling to Imaginationland itself, a lot of the visuals appear to be very heavily inspired by older and more obscure Disney properties. For example, the mayor's design pays homage to a character called Dreamfinder, who first appeared as part of a Disney park attraction in the early 80s. It's fun to pause the Imaginationland scenes and look at the background characters. A lot of work clearly went into stylistically redesigning various IPs to suit the South Park style, and all appears to be fine when the boys are visiting Imaginationland, until suddenly the imagination is attacked by a group of terrorists.
Oh, fuck no!
With all the setup, these scenes are pretty brutal, and the director's cut features several extended sequences, such as shooting Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz to death, and an extended suicide bombing, and likely these scenes were cut from the televised version for their brutality, but of course were restored as part of the director's cut. Amongst all the chaos, the boys do escape the imagination with the help of a dragon, but they leave Butters behind.
Hold on, fellas! Butters, don't leave me, fellas! Come back!
Once again blurring the lines, Kyle wakes up thinking what happened was all just a dream, but it wasn't. Butters is really missing, as shown in a video filmed by the terrorists. And this is where the US government gets involved, oddly seeking help from Hollywood's most imaginative filmmakers for guidance, which I found absolutely hilarious.
Oh!
Surprisingly, Mel Gibson is the most helpful, suggesting that somebody in the terrorists' video may not belong there, hinting at Butters, who becomes the key to all of this. I really like how part 1 wraps up, where there's an extended scene of dialogue between Cartman and Jimmy, and they argue over the homosexual connotations, with Cartman literally now obsessing over Kyle sucking him, and ironically, Kyle is then taken by the US government to help investigate the disappearance of Butters, and how they all got to Imaginationland in the first place. Plus, there is the ominous cliffhanger of the wall being broken, unleashing the evil side of the imagination. Part 2 is a satisfying continuation as we dive deeper into the lore behind Imaginationland, and it begins with a fake-out for Butters and in turn the audience, where he wakes up at home but really he is actually still stuck in the imagination.
Huh?
Hey, wake up, stupid!
It's great to see all of the evil imaginary characters unleashed on this world, but not so much for the citizens of Imaginationland, some of which die horribly, including the mayor. And there are several extended shots for the director's cut, increasing the screen time with several gory scenes, plus the demise of a certain mascot of a large evil corporation. Whilst Butters and a small group of good characters seek salvation, the US government plans to visit Imaginationland themselves. And with a not-so-subtle Stargate parody, a portal to the imagination is successfully opened. I'm referencing some of my personal favourite villainous South Park characters. We see more of the woodland Christmas critters and Man-Bear Pig, who make a grand return, and there's some slight differences between the cuts for the animation for Man-Bear Pig himself, who then attacks several government officials and even kills Kyle. Ironically, Cartman is able to revive his dear friend with selfish intentions in mind, of course. Butters is brought before the Council of Nine, made up of arguably some of the best fictional characters, and he is revealed to be the key to saving the imagination, which takes us to part 3. And this is where we explore a gift Butters has whilst in the imagination. He is real, therefore he can use his imagination as a weapon against evil. And I found Aslan's harsh voiceover hilarious, trying to scare Butters into believing he has such powers.
Believe in Santa right now!
Creating a race against time, Stan finds himself stuck inside Imaginationland, where the US decides to nuke the imagination, therefore stopping it from running wild, and I love how this is such a typical American response to a threat. Nuke it and it'll go away. The US government makes an official statement about how imaginary things are not real by definition, therefore Kyle's deal with Cartman is luckily overturned because leprechauns are considered to be fictional. And arguably one of the best scenes throughout is the final battle for Castle Sunshine. There's so much incredible attention to detail to appreciate, again looking at the imaginary characters in the background who are now fighting for their lives. Speaking of what's imaginary, Cartman unusually confronts the US military trying to stop the nuke from being launched at the imagination, and he disguises his selfish intentions with an ethical debate about what is morally considered to be imaginary and what is real, and I like how this draws on fictional stories and characters that have impacted our lives considerably more than anything considered real. What's ironic about this sequence is Kyle defending the imagination. He's very rarely on the same side as Cartman, but argues for the greater good despite knowing that he's going to have to suck Cartman's balls as a result of this argument. The US agrees to stop the nuke, but Al Gore shows up out of nowhere insisting that Man-Bear Pig must die, and he slaps the console that opens the Stargate into Imaginationland where everything gets sucked inside, including the nuke. Everything is wiped out in a blast except for Butters, who is luckily able to save the day. He imagines everything back to the way things were before the terrorist attack, therefore making him the hero of this story. Overall, I really enjoyed revisiting Imaginationland. It's fun to have this director's cut in the collection, and if you're a fan of these episodes, or if you're a South Park completionist like myself, it's definitely worth adding to your collection. Plus, there is some bonus content on here. You have the episodes Woodland Critter Christmas and Man-Bear Pig included, which I appreciate since they are heavily referenced. And we also have some exclusive extras being commentary by Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and some storyboards as well. And here is a look at the DVD set where we have this really neat looking slipcover with the title there embossed. And then removing the slipcover, we have some similar kind of artwork there, but we also have an incredible shot of Man-Bear Pig on the back. And there's a look at the disc artwork with Butters in the bubble, just like the Kid Robot figure I've got there in the background. That's going to do it for this comparison video / review. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments if you've seen this cut of Imaginationland, and if so, what did you think of it? And for more content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?